poor creature must die. A death for no reason, and death for no reason is murder.
One of the most serious new threats came from animal rights activists like the Animal Liberation Front, the ALF. They were prepared to use violence.
Over the years, animal extremists have learned tactics from terrorist groups, in the sense of using incendiary devices and, on a few occasions, high explosives. Their organisation is difficult to infiltrate, and clearly we need to use the whole gamut of intelligence gathering methods in terms of addressing that threat.
Although the ALF deny they are terrorists, they certainly look like them and, to the secret state, act like them, breaking into laboratories to liberate animals bred for tests. They've also targeted meat lorries and abattoirs, as well as the companies who run them. In 1994, an ALF leader was jailed for 14 years for sabotage. What you were involved in was terrorism, wasn't it? You were a terrorist.
Well, again, one man's terrorist is another man's freedom fighter. Call us violent, call us terrorists, call us thugs, call us anarchists. They're all used regularly. All we're asking for is change. We want people to stop using violence against animals.
But animal rights extremists also devised more subtle ways of hitting big business. They targeted giant multinationals like SmithKline Beecham, which tested some of its medicines on animals.
The last thing in the world they want is the air of publicity. They don't want people talking about what they're doing to live animals in their laboratories behind closed doors. They're not almighty anymore, these companies. They're not all powerful. They can be impacted upon by little people, and that's what's happening.
Special Branch countered these new economic subversives with methods traditionally deployed against the left and right. This resulted in intelligence that SmithKline Beecham's Lucasade was to be targeted. Where did you get the intelligence from?
From an officer who'd been associated with the group that was plotting this.
An undercover officer?
Yes.
And is it difficult to infiltrate such groups?
Yeah, it is extremely difficult because only those who trust each other will get involved in those sort of actions.
The Lucasade bottles, allegedly, were going to be contaminated with a bleach, so that Lucasade, the company at the time, would have to remove that product from the shelves.
The intelligence presented Special Branch with a classic dilemma: to protect the public or protect their undercover colleague.
A decision was taken that protecting the public from contaminated Lucasade was probably more important than protecting the officer.
As a result, the company took drastic action, costing millions of pounds. 5 million bottles were withdrawn. The public was safe, but what about the undercover officer?
I think there's fingers of suspicion pointing backwards and forwards across the table at various people, but the officer managed to survive that one.
You work for me, or you're worse, you're doing it for money! You work!
In the 90s, as animal rights activists widened their campaign, the Home Office gave Special Branch additional funds to recruit more spies.
There were one or two that were on the payroll earning quite considerable sums, probably up to 10,000 a year. 10,000 I would be wanting 22 karat gold information from them, intelligence from them.
Did you get any intelligence of that quality?
Tremendous intelligence the whole time we were getting in.
Worth the money?
Every penny. We were running, approaching 100 agents, if not more, within the animal rights field.
100?
100.
Since there weren't that many militant animal rights activists, Special Branch had most of them covered.
I would assess that there are no more than 30 or 40 activists prepared to use extreme violence to further their cause in the country in terms of animal extremism.
Do you know who these 30 or so hardcore activists are?
Yes, we do.
So, how did Special Branch deploy all its new spies? The strategy was to identify the leaders and then target them. A prime candidate was the ALF's press officer and chief ideologue, Robin Webb.
It's no good asking for animal liberation. They're not going to hand it to us. We've all, when we leave here, in our own way, we've got to go out and take it.
Robin Webb, how was he regarded?
Seemed, as far as we were concerned, to know too much about what was happening. Whenever events, the real animal activist carried out an operation, he was the first one to be told about it.
When the law is wrong, yes, I believe people should break the law. Maybe, just maybe, we have to use short-term violence in pursuit of a long-term peace.
Was he targeted?
He was targeted very much so, yeah. We had agents running against him.
Agents running against
We
him?
ran agents against him, yeah.
That you were handling?
Yes.
And how close to him were they?
Very close. He would, I think he would be quite surprised to realise just how close they were.
I have been made aware that my house, my car, and my telephone have been monitored, have been bugged, that I have been under surveillance, and that my mail has been intercepted. All of these are completely unwarranted in what is supposed to be a democratic, free society.
But that's not how Special Branch officers saw it. They suspected Webb was up to no good. And what information were the agents giving you? What kind of information about Mr. Webb?
Well, in the end, they gave us information that he may have been in possession of a shotgun.
And what action did you take?
We kept surveillance on him and waited for him to pick this shotgun up.
Webb maintained that he'd been given an article in wrapping and didn't know what it was.
I was aware of what I thought was in the package.
Which was?
It was equipment which was going to be passed on to be used by somebody else to help animals.
He was arrested in possession of a shotgun without a certificate and was taken to local police station and charged.
At Lewes Crown Court, the prosecution was asked to disclose all its evidence, including that obtained covertly through Special Branch spies and technical surveillance. But the risk of exposing the agents was too great. The prosecution dropped the case and Webb walked free. His supporters suspected the secret state had been up to its tricks.
The Crown Prosecution Service made a formal admission to Crown Court that an undisclosed agency had entered my vehicle and had placed listening devices, although they refused to identify which agency it was.
In your car?
In my car.
A bug?
A bug, yes.
Did you bug his car?
I wouldn't wish to comment on that.
Whatever the truth, a shotgun was found in the car. The secret state never got its man, but lessons were learned. The next target was another prominent animal rights activist, Barry Horn. How would you describe Barry Horn?
As a committed man, a very kind man, a very caring man, he saw the whole spectrum of the animal welfare, animal liberation movement, and was prepared to do whatever was necessary at any given time.
Barry Horn had been an animal rights activist for years. He began his career by protesting against butchers' shops.
I mean, I've seen butchers carrying carcasses of dead animals into their shop. That is totally offensive to me. It's revolting.
He then graduated from words to direct action.
He was strongly, very strongly suspected of causing many hundreds of thousands of pounds worth of damage to stores in Cambridge and on the Isle of Wight. Very strongly suspected of that, but unfortunately there was no evidence to bring him before the court.
Horn was so security conscious that initially Special Branch failed to recruit a spy.
But eventually the indications received in Special Branch that he was about to start another bombing campaign.
How did you know he was about to start another bombing campaign?
We had an agent who was reporting on Barry Horn.
Was he close to Barry Horn?
The man was very close, yeah.
Why would a man like that, who was close and a friend to Barry Horn, be prepared to betray him?
I wouldn't say it was a question of betraying him. It was a question of possibly looking at it in a way of saving human life.
Acting on information from the spy, Horn was tracked around the country for 6 weeks by National Crime Squad surveillance teams. Finally, he drove into Bristol. As he went round the shops, a team followed him. Then they pounced. This time, there was no lack of evidence.
And Barry Horn was actually caught in the act of putting 3 significant firebombs down in 3 stores in Bristol. He'd actually been caught doing it, and they were diffused there and then. Saved a lot of damage and possibly saved people's lives. So yes, we were delighted.
Caught red-handed.
Caught red-handed.
Could you have done it without the agent?
No.
Horn was sentenced to 18 years for a firebombing campaign that caused £3 million worth of damage. In jail, he embarked on a series of hunger strikes in protest against the government's failure to introduce a royal commission on vivisection. He died last year, weakened by his protests.
I love waking up to seeing the sunshine coming through the leaves, or hearing the rain coming down through them. Owls perching on the branches just outside your window in the night. The downside of it is that eventually they're going to get chopped down. To see an area of such beauty ripped apart by machines, tarmacked over, so that people can take a few minutes off a journey time is devastating.
As gridlock loomed, a new kind of protester emerged, gentler but no less exhaustive of police resources. When the government announced a 9-mile bypass for Newbury, an army of protesters took to the woods.
What do we want? Stop the cutting now! What do we want?
Some lived in trees to prevent contractors cutting them down. The sheriff's men moved in. To the police, these were subversives, determined to stop lawful activity.
I know that the state have, employed people to creep around in the bushes and take photographs of me and stuff. It's sort of what happens, it sort of makes you feel a bit vulnerable.
The ones who were planning and tried to carry out seriously illegal acts are very subversive in the sense of subversive to democracy.
The cost of policing Newbury was almost £8 million. The secret state needed top-grade intelligence to thwart the protesters. That meant recruiting informants from whatever source.
Bad boy!
The information came at a price, and the prices certainly varied.
Sometimes £25 to an informant is quite sufficient for information that will help build the picture. Right up to, on some occasions, what would appear to be quite substantial amounts of money for people that will give information at the top level.
£1,000 a week?
It could be that type of money.
Worth it? Sort of sounds an awful lot of money.
It is a lot of money. For me, absolutely worth it.
We can now reveal for the first time that the police recruited a top-grade agent to infiltrate the protesters, and controversially, he came from a private security company. The police normally keep such firms at arm's length.
One's got to remember that these types of organisations are in it commercially. They need to gather intelligence. They need companies to buy that intelligence. So there's always a big problem with looking at that.
An unprecedented contract was drawn up between the agent, the private security company, and Thames Valley Police.
That meant that we could anticipate what their plans were and doing things, and therefore, on many occasions, we were able to preempt the situation which would happen.
Once he'd infiltrated the Green activists, the Newbury agent had to prove his worth. When the protesters realised that they too, like the trees, could be uprooted, they literally dug in, excavating several tunnels. The main one was 10 feet deep and 90 feet long.
We were hoping that the tunnels were going to stop access of machinery onto site, that they weren't going to be able to bring in large vehicles into the sites to get people out of the trees, to take trees down. They wouldn't be able to fell trees because the impact on the ground would cause danger to those underneath.
Although the police had taken all the minor tunnels, it was too risky to storm the main one. The Newbury agent provided vital intelligence on the best time to swoop. He told his handler there was only a man and a woman in the shelter over the entrance. A third protester, he said, was sleeping in the main entry shaft.
And so we decided to take the tunnel in the middle of the night when there was nobody actually in the tunnel itself. It was merely being guarded.
Undercover officers were watching the shelter, or bender, and waiting for the agent's signal.
It was clear that a good deal of drinking and tenants' strong brew had been drunk because of the discarded cans all around the camp. And so, inevitably, in the early hours of the morning, the male protester, sleeping at the top of the tunnel in the bender, came out, went into the bushes to relieve himself, where he met with police officers who detained him. And inevitably, his girlfriend came out to go to look for him, and she was also detained and was reunited with her boyfriend.
That only left the person sleeping in the entry shaft.
And it's pitch black in the middle of a camp, and by now it's about 3:30 in the morning. And some noises were made at the top, at the entrance to the tunnel, by police officers, which required investigation, and he came out to investigate. And again then he met with my police colleagues, and at that point then they had secured the entrance to the tunnel.
The tunnel that had taken 9 months to build was captured in a few short minutes.
We hoped that somebody was down the tunnel. It didn't take long to find out that nobody was, and so that defence had sort of become ineffective. It was a quite a big blow, really. Quite demoralising. You know, a lot of effort had gone into it, and a lot of hopes had been put into it.
Could you have done it without the intelligence from your source?
No, not in that manner, not at all. Not so successfully, so safely, and so quickly.
Did you know that the reason why the police were able to take the tunnel when they did was because they had a highly placed agent in your midst?
It wouldn't surprise me. I wouldn't be surprised at all.
He was paid a lot of money to do what he did, to infiltrate you and
He'd have to get paid a lot of money, because if anybody found out about it while he was there, I should imagine it would be quite dangerous.
By the time Tony Blair came to power, animal rights activists had devised a new strategy to target the industry that they believed made millions from animal suffering. They began by attacking the first and most vulnerable link in the chain, animal breeders like Hillgrove Cat Farm.
The whole network of companies in this country and all around the world who make their money by breeding specific animals for people who experiment on them. So we decided we'd start at the bottom, if you like, and take out some of the weaker links, the breeders, the not so big companies.
The secret state planned to confound this scheme by moving the Newbury agent into the world of animal rights. Your source moves on from Newbury with the street cred that he's got from Newbury to Hillgrove.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely.
And that enables you to do what?
To work on the sort of numbers that we could expect to turn up, and whether they were going to target the cattery or whether they were going to, as they did on occasions, target the owner's house, which was all within the same complex.
The defence of the owner's right to breed cats stretched police resources. The Newbury agent ensured the police were ready at the right time and in the right numbers. The owner was at first defiant.
I'm going to carry on today when I intended to retire. I don't intend giving in to anarchy. It makes me more determined than ever.
Control, substantial missile attack from a portion of the crowd, over.
Protecting the guilty, that's what you're doing! Protecting the evil! And you've got no morals!
If you just sat back and say, OK, well, this is going to cost an awful lot of police, so we can't afford to protect this person, that's a pretty bad decision to take. So you really have to take people on.
I'll give you control! Move that way! You want to see control, do you? Do you want to see control? But maybe...
Despite the best efforts of the Newbury agent, the protesters won.
I've been beaten up, my wife has been attacked, staff's homes have been attacked, cars have been completely vandalised, written off, and that has been a big drain.
The cats were saved. The new strategy of applying economic pressure seemed to pay off. Now it was time to hit bigger targets. Next on the hit list was Huntingdon Life Sciences, HLS, that carries out animal experiments on behalf of pharmaceutical companies. The campaign was fueled by a video secretly filmed by a protester who'd infiltrated Huntingdon's labs.
Shut up. That's wet, I shouldn't.
The company was subsequently placed under new management.
You better shut up. Fucking sit still.
2 workers were dismissed.
A lot of people, whilst we were doing Hillgrove, had watched the footage taken inside Huntingdon of the beagle puppies being punched and had never forgotten that.
Fucking mad we go! Every fucking time point!
Read my lips, Huntingdon is finished.
The campaign was spearheaded by a group known as SHAC, Stop Huntingdon Animal Cruelty. SHAC's tactics include violent intimidation of HLS staff.
I believe it's as close to terrorism as most of my employees ever want to come. To them, certainly when you're being, have a mob in your driveway at your home, when your car may have been set on fire, that to those people is terrorism, without question.
The campaign culminated with a violent attack on Brian Cass himself.
I suddenly heard running footsteps, obviously quite purposeful in more than one set, rushing up behind me. And I turned to find 3 individuals with balaclavas and what certainly looked like pickaxe handles or something of that nature, already literally raised above their head, intent upon obviously hitting me with them. So I got quite a severe beating across my arms and shoulders and a very nasty gash on the head, which required about 9 stitches.
If the state keep closing in on legitimate protest and making it illegal and dangerous to demonstrate lawfully, people are going to go to the furthest extreme.
Killing
and
people.
The furthest extreme, absolutely, is to take the life of somebody like Brian Cass. I'm not saying I want it to happen or I'm encouraging it, but you can see that when the legitimate protest is taken away, there's nothing left to people.
And that's why the secret state is watching you.
Well, the secret state is making us like that. It is turning people into subversives.
If Huntingdon Life Sciences was to fail and be brought down by animal extremists, they would merely move on to another organisation. The domino effect that this would have on the pharmaceutical industry, the biochemical industry, its customers, its finance stakeholders, etc., would be a matter of serious concern for government in terms of economic stability.
To combat this new threat and the serious violence that goes with it, the secret state uses every high-tech resource at its disposal. What evidence of surveillance have you found?
Tracking devices on vehicles, listening devices, intensive following of people. Costs millions, all paid for by the taxpayer.
People have learned not to talk openly on the phones now. to check vehicles with radio frequency detectors for tracking devices. Not to talk in houses, to be aware who's listening when they're in the pub, if they're having a conversation in the pub.
But as ever, the most effective method of spying is planting agents. Do you have agents inside Shack?
I think because this is a current activity that's going on, you wouldn't expect me to disclose operational tactics.
Nor would I expect you not to have agents within Shack.
That may be your view.
The coyness is perhaps understandable given the acute sensitivity of current operations. But there's no doubt the spy masters are committed to the long haul.
We'd be prepared to fund somebody for a long period of time until they got to, if you like, a management position within these organisations and were able to report directly on what the plans were for the future.
How long?
Sometimes years.
Years?
Years.
To get to the top?
Get to that position where we knew that they were reporting what was going to happen tomorrow and not what happened yesterday.